Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Wellspring. My name is Martha Ward, and I'm part of your Sunday, April 25th, 2021 service team. Now we have a few announcements. Early Birds meet Sunday mornings at 9:30 via Zoom. The link is in the weekly email and on the web address. Upcoming speakers for May: on the 2nd, Edward Burlbaugh; on the 9th, Jim Moore; on the 16th, Edward Burlbaugh; on the 23rd, Kamatara; and on the 30th, Judy is going to present us with another wonderful video. Archives of our past services can be found on our website, and see the arrows on the slide. And lastly, our prayer team remains ready to serve and support you. You may submit a request via our webpage, or you may contact Martha Ward or Geneva Collins with your request. Our prayer team meets virtually on Tuesday afternoons at 4:15 to pray with you. You may consider sitting in your quiet space during that time, and we know we are one in spirit, and the energy of prayer knows no limits. Join me now in prayer, please. For anyone who has not been out here to Wellspring recently, I would urge you all to take a drive out here. The roses are in full bloom and wide open and just gorgeous. The colors are wonderful, and I want to thank everybody on the green team for keeping them alive and keeping them so well and nurtured. So in this spirit of openness, as with the roses, we come together this morning to increase our vibration and to hear a wonderful message from our guest speaker, Peggy. And not only that, but we open our hearts and our minds in fellowship as we come together, either in person or on Zoom. And so as we turn our attention to the reason for our being here, recognizing the presence of Spirit all around us in God's creation, throughout the planet, throughout the universe. We also acknowledge our oneness with that Spirit, with that one creative force, and we know that our mind is one with the mind of Spirit. And as we engage in spiritual practices of contemplation and meditation, our hearts and mind open to the inspiration from Spirit. And in that mode, we carry out our life knowing that we are one with Spirit and one with one another. And so it is. So, stand if you are able and join us, please, for our song of joy.
In the bowl there is a flower, in the seed an apple tree,
And please be seated and let us read together our vision, mission, and affirmation. Our vision: to elevate spiritual consciousness in our world. Our mission: to support individual and spiritual quests through celebration, study, counsel, loving fellowship, and service. And our affirmations: I open my heart and mind to the joy of spirit operating in every situation in my life. I accept and receive the unlimited flow of abundance in my world. I attract loving and supportive relationships around me. I am connected to the wisdom of spirit in every decision I make. And now, we have our guest musicians, Taylor Ray and Mark Klett.
So since we are fully in spring now with the flowers blooming and everything, I thought that we could do some songs about rain, and in this case rainbows, since we're in a little bit of a drought. And this is my favorite song of all time. It's by Kermit the Frog, and it's Rainbow Connection. Why are there so many songs about rainbows, and what's on the other side? Rainbows are visions, but only illusions, and rainbows have nothing to hide. So we've been told, and some choose to believe it. I know they're wrong, wait and see. Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me. Who said that every wish would be heard and answered, and wished on a morning star? Somebody thought of that, and someone believed him. Look what it's done so far. What's so amazing that keeps us stargazing? And what do we think we might see? Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me. All of us under its spell, we know that it's probably magic. Have you been half asleep, and have you heard voices? I've heard them calling my name. Are these the sweet sounds that called the young sailors? The voice might be one and the same. I've heard it too many times to ignore it. It's something I'm supposed to be. Someday we'll find it, the rainbow connection, the lovers, the dreamers, and me. La da dee da da dum, da 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 doo.
Thank you, Taylor and Mark. Wonderful, as usual. The reading this morning comes from The Untethered Soul by Michael A. Singer. When you have fear inside of you, the events of life invariably stimulate it. Like a rock thrown into the water, the world with its continuous changes creates ripples in whatever is held within you. There's nothing wrong with that. Life creates situations that push you to your edges, all with the effect of removing what is blocked inside of you. That which is blocked and buried within you forms the root of fear. Fear is caused by blockages in the flow of your energy. When your energy is blocked, it can't come up and feed your heart. Therefore, your heart becomes weak. When your heart is weak, it becomes susceptible to lower vibrations, and one of the lowest of all vibrations is fear. Fear is the cause of every problem. It's the root of all prejudices and the negative emotions of anger, jealousy, and possessiveness. If you had no fear, you could be perfectly happy living in this world. Nothing would bother you. You'd be willing to face everything and everyone because you wouldn't have fear inside of you that could cause you disturbance. The purpose of spiritual evolution is to remove the blockages that cause you fear. If you truly want to grow spiritually, you'll realize that keeping your stuff is keeping you trapped. Eventually, you'll want out at any cost. You will then realize that life is actually trying to help you. Life is surrounding you with people and situations that stimulate growth. You don't have to decide who's right or wrong. You don't have to worry about other people's issues. You only have to be willing to open your heart in the face of anything and everything and permit the purification process to take place. When you do this, the first thing you'll see is that situations will unfold that hit your stuff. But in truth, that's exactly what's been happening your entire life. The only difference is that now you see it as a good thing because it's an opportunity to let go. The stuff that holds you down periodically rears its head. When it does, let it go. You simply permit the pain to come up to your heart and pass through. If you do that, it will pass. If you're secretly seeking truth, you'll let go every time. This is the beginning and the end of the entire path. You surrender yourself to the process of emptying yourself. When you work with this, you start to learn the subtler laws of the process of letting go. And so it is. And now we have a message from our wonderful Peggy Schinn. Peggy has been a longtime practitioner of science of mind. She's here in Las Cruces, but she also participates in a ministry in Mexico whose name she even went and spelled out for me, and I let it go. So with no further ado, I want to welcome our dear friend Peggy Schinn.
Thank you. We're going to make an adjustment here, Edwin. Okay. I was going to lower it and move it a little bit this way, if that's okay. That's okay. We have to worry about two elements of the technology nowadays. It's not just the in the room part, but on the Zoom part. So we have the Zoomunity that's there, and you guys are part of that, and they're part of us. So we'll take it from there and see what we can do. As you were reading your reading, Martha, I particularly loved the God slip, the Freudian slip, right? of letting it grow. I love that. Let it go to let it grow. So that's what we're here to talk about and to do in Science of Mind. It seems like that is the calling to our higher selves, is always letting go to let it grow. And your spring brings out the idea of letting things grow too. I think we could have gone home at the song, The Promise. I forgot what the name of the song actually is. Spring's Promise, okay. Because everything in the words of the song, I'm reading it and watching it and listening to it and thinking, well, that's the message that we're going to get to. Sure. I'm pretty sure you guys can hear me. No, I'm fine. Okay. Thank you. I think I'm fine. I think the microphone is for the Zoom folks. Yes. Not so much for you all in the room, right? At least for me. I mean, you know, I've always said that I could whisper and you can hear me across the football field. So I hope that there's not any problem, unless you have an actual hearing impairment, that I can't fix that by yelling louder, but we'll do the best we can with what we've got. But I like to move. I don't like to be entirely tethered in the untethered soul that I am. I like to be a little bit moving around. So I wanted to move the microphone a little bit this way so it could still catch the voice for the Zoom people. Is that okay? So anybody in Zoom, if you got a chat room going, and Brenda can look at that, if you're having any trouble hearing us, please report in so that we can fix it if it's not going to work properly. As Martha mentioned, I am involved in a ministry in Mexico as well. There is a Science of Mind Center, the Lake Chapala Center for Spiritual Living, that I'm a practitioner at, is where my actual practitioner license is. They are affiliated with the Centers for Spiritual Living in the United States, but happen to be operating in Mexico. And down there, I'm involved in both their Spanish-speaking ministerial activities or ministries activities, as well as the center, the local population there. And we've obviously, like you all probably have too, done more things on Zoom, taken in more people from even outside of the local geographic area. So it's great, you know, that's another Corona bonus, I call it, that we've gotten from the benefit of sometimes something like a pandemic can sort of push you in ways that you might otherwise been reluctant to move. And that's part of what I want to talk about today too. Anyway, the minister down there, Reverend Tim Schubert, he was on the Zoom with us last time, and I forgot to tell him until just about 11 o'clock this morning that I was speaking, so I didn't send him the link, so I don't think he's here today. But he set a theme for this year that was going to be about thriving, not just surviving, as we're moving into our second year of this, whatever this is. Actually, a friend of mine down there taught me something new that I wasn't, you know, how we reframe things. And she said, I don't call it the quarantine, because in Mexico in Spanish, that's basically what they call it, la cuarentena, is what's going on. They don't call it the pandemic so much as they call it la cuarentena. And she said, I've decided that I'm not calling it the cuarentena, I'm just calling it a holiday. So I said, I love that idea. You know, just change your thinking, change your mind, change your life, you know, change your observance of life. And so I'm happy to call it a holiday too, and I hope you all are enjoying your holiday. But we had another holiday this month that is celebrated in the traditional Christian world called Easter, and that's a little bit of what I think is the theme for this month, is about resurrection. So Reverend Tim had this idea about the thriving, not surviving, and at first when he talked to me about it, I thought, I had this image of the concept of the phoenix rising from the ashes, that would be this year for me at any rate. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today a little bit, the rising from the ashes, and particularly, you know, what happened with the ashes. Thank you, Terry. I'm a little bit chilly up here. Are you guys okay down there? All right. Something is like coming in from the breeze here or whatever. So we have all heard, I think, about this mythical bird that's the phoenix, that can live for hundreds of years and then essentially build its own funeral pyre, consume itself in the fire, and then rise from the ashes for another several hundred years. And Martha, the overachiever that she is, actually she prepared 2 different readings today, because she did call me yesterday, and I said, well, I'm going to be talking about rising from the ashes. That's basically what I told her. So she came in with this thing about the phoenix. So I'm going to read you a paragraph or so from what she prepared, because after we talked about it, she decided she'd do the other reading instead. You know, I don't talk to the musicians typically. I don't talk to the people who do the readings. I leave it up to them and God, and it's always perfect. So she says, what is the phoenix? The story of the phoenix is legendary and likely one of the most well-known ancient myths in modern day. It's famous for the many elements that it is said to be of concerning. Life and death, creation and destruction, even time itself is tied to the tale of the phoenix. The phoenix is a majestic bird-like creature that lived in paradise, and like all other creatures who live in paradise, was known to live a good life. It was a land of unimaginable perfection and beauty and said to exist somewhere beyond the brilliance of the sun. However, in time, the bird would begin to feel the effects of its age, and after 1,000 years or so had passed, it was ready to move on. So the phoenix that we know of that lived in paradise wasn't the original one. There's over and over and over again the resurrection of this bird. Here in the area that we're in, I think we're probably more familiar with the Native American thunderbird. But many cultures have a similar kind of concept of this mythical creature that oftentimes is a bird that will be consumed or die or transform itself in some fashion to go on to the next part of whatever that life on the planet was supposed to be. And at the time that I had talked to Tim about my idea in a class, because he's part of my the class that I teach in Spanish. He's like the co-teacher. He runs the Zoom room, and but he's a participant too. And we have a check-in, and he was sharing about some issue that was going on that was kind of troublesome to him. And the previous week we had talked about the phoenix rising, and so when he was talking about his concern, I said, well, you know, I kind of think that the one thing that goes with the other is to have the phoenix rising, you have to have had the fire. You have to have gone through the fire. And I believe that we've all heard this adage that where there's smoke, there's fire. And where there are ashes, there was a fire. So we want to put that part of it kind of in the past, that there was a fire. But what do we do for the most part when we're thinking about how does the phoenix move through this process? And what I'd like to deal with is the metaphor that I see it as, that I think applies to us here and in our lives. You know, the last time I was here, I talked to you all about the kintsugi process of repairing the ceramics with gold and making things stronger at the broken places. So what I have in mind here today to talk to you about is the resurrection. It's our Easter month, and reckoning and rectification, that are all a part of what I want to consider today in my talk. So the first part about it is, when we're going through these ashes, typically after a fire, and I've never had a situation, and I am sorry for any of you who may have, if you've ever had a fire that destroyed a lot of your personal possessions or what have you, but metaphorically, I think it applies here, where people who've had a fire and are combing through the ashes of what once was their physical life that has burnt up, they're oftentimes grieving and angry and lamenting what was lost, rather than appreciating what they might find, the little treasures that they might still find in the ashes. Get closer. All right. Thank you. So we are busy carrying on about what's gone, and I've heard this a lot in this last year. I don't know about you all in your world, in your life, but it's like on the news every day about what you can't do anymore, where you can't go, what you can't be. And And we were lamenting that and talking about, oh, when is it going to get back to normal again? And I think it's time to just burn that up and rise from those ashes. So when we're busy looking at what's absent rather than what's present, I think we're building resentment instead of resilience. And that resentment is taking the place of building resilience and creating a new life for ourselves with what we have from the ashes that we can take with us. So that resurrection is just right here, right now, today. We can do it right now in this room. And enough already with all of the, oh, woe is me stuff, and move on to recognize that it's time for the resurrection. It's time to take flight from the ashes of the past. Put out the fire by replacing it with another one is what I want to suggest. If you've ever seen or heard on the news where they're having a big forest fire or conflagration somewhere, and in order to try to stop the movement of the fire, they start a backfire to push back against that fire. So I'm going to suggest today that what we're talking about with resurrection and reckoning and rectification is not being in the fire, but getting on fire. Let's find something new. Let's find a way to move through all of this that sets us on fire again for our life, our living, and our time that's remaining on the planet. And I suggest that we do that by setting aside this anger, this resentment, this grieving, sometimes the anticipatory grieving for what might be next thing to have to grieve, and hold that energy in its place and move aside to make space for something more to come in. Let it go to let it grow, right? So let's start with excitement, purpose, getting back to your spiritual practices, which kind of is, nowadays for me, looking away. It's the golden key. It's like looking away from what all the news says, from what everybody else is talking about, from what you're unhappy about that you can't do or might not be able to ever do again. Who knows? And let all of that go and turn to God. That's the letting it go to let it grow. Because in the spirit, there is none of this. And we can hold ourselves at a higher level. That spiritual evolution that Martha was reading about involves us having to go in. Reverend Tim down there in Chapala said, when COVID started and the church and everything had to shut down, all the activities, the center had to shut down. He said, well, when you can't go out, go in. So I'm going to be inviting you to consider some avenues with that too. But it's time to leave all those feelings of separation and loss behind and feel the unity and namaste up. That's what I call namaste up. You know, we all know what this is, right? We've been around long enough to know what this is. The God in me greets the God in you. So if we namaste up, we're not out walking around with the mask. We can actually look in one another's eyes. We can greet each other. We can recognize that the Spirit is there not only in the other human beings that we're interacting with, but also with everything on the planet. There is no spot where God is not, including in the coronavirus, including everything that we're hearing about on the news. You know, Michael Beckwith just says those are the world's prayer requests. If you insist on paying attention to the news, then at least think about it from the standpoint of formulating your own treatment around whatever this is that is giving us today's news. So I'm inviting us to just, be out of the fire and be on fire. When we're in the fire, that is sort of answering the question, what is or what was? That's the news. But when we're being on fire, that's the answer to the question, what if? What if? What if I was one of those lovers and dreamers and me in the song about the rainbow? Is there a rainbow connection? Is there a connection there that I can find? Is there something that I can get on fire about? So I'm going to suggest that you be your own burning bush. You know, most of us are not going to have in our lifetime the equivalent of Moses in the burning bush. We got to create it for ourselves. We got to allow that calling to show up for us in whatever way it's going to show up. But as what Martha was reading to us this morning, when your stuff's in the way, it's blocking that energy that would have allowed maybe more of an openness to bring to you and bring to your attention what it is that might be calling you. So in this resurrection, I want you to think about what your new story is. If you're going to become the me with the lovers and the dreamers, what do you want to do? What do you want to become? Who do you want to be? Because it's not about resurrecting the past to have the resurrection. It's being resurrected to have a start over, or to have new beginnings, to understand that there's more out there still yet to come. There is that great yet to be we want to say yes to. So I invite you to look at your story. Look at this stuff that Martha was reading to us about, that Mickey Singer is saying, take a look inside, especially when you can't go outside. Whether you have the shadow that's probably occluding your assets. You know, we are always focused on our weaknesses, what we have to get better at, or what we have to be improving on, rather than just letting it go to let it grow, because nature will take care of itself if we let go. But what I'm holding on to has got to hold on me. And if I don't let it go, it can't grow. It's like holding the plant or pulling it up to see if the roots are there. You know, is it growing? Oh, okay, put it back. Well, I think I killed it, you know. These are the things that we as humans have this sort of fear and anxiety about. She's talking about fear in there as basically the root of all evil, that in the reading that she gave today, that fear is what it's all about. And our fear is what we build our stories around. We all have our own personal story. I call it our personal lie. It's my personal lie, your personal lie. We make it up. We make it up as we go along. There is no world out there that has this objective reality except what is the eternal of the spirit. The rest of it we make up because we choose to interpret it as we choose to interpret it. We don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. So we've made up how we are, and we've made up how our world is. I had a conversation yesterday with a 21-year-old who told me that I just can't believe how badly my life sucks. And I'm only 21. Like, you know, I've got this the rest of my whole life, all these years to go. And he's like, oh, woe is me, you know. I said, no. You know, you've decided that your world sucks, that your life sucks. Just make a different decision. So I say we've created this illusion. This was the illusion of the rainbow too. It's all illusion that was created by somebody who made it up. And the more people who believe what was made up, the more belief there is around it sometimes. But the illusion is simply another word for lie. And so my slogan is, if I want to get a better life, I got to get a better lie. So you made it up before, you can make it up again now. I talked to you when I was here last time about mythologizing your life rather than pathologizing it. Make up a different story. So when it comes to the getting to the reckoning, in order to have a new story, we got to let go of the old one. And we've got to bring these things into reckoning with the old and the new, and get into that spiritual practice that involves rescuing the spiritual truth. Because a lot of times we have let it sort of fall by the wayside. And reconcile with whatever it is that had happened, whatever it is that you think is the problem, whoever it is that victimized you, whatever your story is, just change it. Make it the opposite maybe sometimes. But find out what it was that happened, make a reckoning for it, atone for it, forgive it, and forgive it all. As you're kind of rebuilding from these ashes that you've resurrected from, putting it back together where those broken pieces will be stronger than they were before. We talked about last time. And then choose, just choose to become something other. Now, maybe you get a new personal line, you get a new personal story. That's okay, but it's about elevating. That's what it said in your mission statement and your beginning of the opening of the service today. Elevating the consciousness, elevating the spiritualness. You know, Jesus told his disciples at the end there in that story that we've been looking at sometimes in this month of Easter, cheer up, I have overcome the world. Well, if all that he did we can do, we can overcome the world too. So whatever has gone on in your world, whatever's in your mind that you're holding in there, allow it to be released, to let it go in order that you can grow. Not necessarily let grow what you let go, but to let it grow inside of you, let the Spirit grow inside of you. Figure out what you're called to do. What's left? What's the job inside that you need to do first in order to be able to do the job outside that will benefit you and the rest of humanity? Not that your own consciousness elevation doesn't elevate the entire consciousness. I don't want to make that assumption. But healing is what I'm talking about. And healing happens one aha at a time. So we have the ahas as we move through the process of looking, you know, shining the light on the shadow, looking at our story, rewriting our story, and come to the point where you're able to reveal it, to deal with it, to feel it, and to heal it. I just say reveal, feel, deal, heal. Those are my four little words for how we come through the process of taking that aha, figuring it out, reapplying it, put those pieces back together again, slip that gold slip in there, make this thing valuable, make it more useful, take those lessons in that story and reapply them to a new story, so that the possibilities that you found in your shadow will probably reveal the assets that you have to bring to the table now that you might want to consider. One of my ahas a few years ago was that I didn't want to be an optimist like Pollyanna, and I didn't want to be a pessimist like the nihilists are. And I didn't want to have happen, you know, what happens when you're a negative thinker. But I decided that I would be a possibilist. So I invite you to consider being a possibilist. And when you move through the shadow and you discover the possibilities are still there, and in a time that we're in right now where, oh, it's so bad that nothing's planned and you can't figure out anything, and well, we never could. We just thought we could. So allow the idea that if nothing is the same, then anything and everything is possible, right? So if you're with me in that possibilities, when we expand into all this possibility, that's when we allow the calling to speak to us. That's when we're open. That's when we're having the opportunity to be aware, alert, awake, alive, enthusiastic, all of that. So we get to the point of having to deal with the rectification. Once we've gone through the reckoning and we've brought ourselves into this new story, it's about setting the path and the course for the flight of our resurrection. We want that trajectory to be something that is pointing in the direction we want to go. And rectification, we kind of have this idea that it's about setting things right. You know, the recta is the word for right from the Latin derivation. But Eric Butterworth, I think maybe many of you have probably read some of his books. He taught me one thing that I love, this little, you know, I love these little bumper sticker kinds of things. He says, it's not about setting it right, it's about seeing it right. And you all have probably heard the Marcel Proust, I don't know how to quote it and I don't have it written down, but he says that the journey is not about going out and seeing the world. It's about getting a new set of eyes with which to see it. And this again is when we don't see the world as it is, we see it as we are. So the only thing we have to do to change the world we see is to change us. Well, how simple is that, right? not so easy. So I invite you to consider this little acronym that I have, that's HOW, that I learned from the 12-step programs. That the way we do it is we're honest, that's the H. We have the willingness, excuse me, that's the W. Excuse me, the O is open-mindedness, and then the W is willingness. So it's honest, open-minded, and willing. That again invites us to be entertaining whatever is possible. It might be possible that what I've told myself all these years about X is a lie. You know, it might be, if I'm open-minded about it, that I might come up with another idea about it. And it might be that if I'm willing enough, I might take action on it. And that's how we change the story that changes our life, that changes the world we see, because we've changed the world we be. So as we're combing through these ashes from our past to see what we choose to keep and take with us on this flight of the Phoenix and rectify the course of our flight, we practice also something that I call the spiritual ABCs. I talked to you about this last time I was here too. This is another little moniker thing. The A is aware, the B is breathe, and the C is choose. So when we become aware of, well, maybe that story that I've told myself all these years isn't really true. There might be some spiritual truth there that overrides what I was telling myself was true. And we become aware of it, then before we take that reaction response that we're oftentimes just knee-jerking into, we take a minute and breathe. Breathe in, allow that breath to center us, to give us just enough of what Sandy Scott calls the wiggle room, to be able to make a choice rather than a reaction. So the choice is available to us for anything. I don't care if you're going to lunch afterwards here with somebody and you're going to make a choice about where to go, or if you're making a choice about to do some 180-degree turn in your life. It's just like in the Course in Miracles. There's no degree of order of miracles. There's no degree or order of choices. Every single choice we make has a difference, makes a difference in the outcome of our lives. So we keep that in mind as we move through this. So I'd like to invite you to, if you're willing, to do a little short closed-eye process with me using the ABCs, where we're going to get to the place, I hope, where after we do the aware, the breathe, and the choose, we're able to see that it was all for my good and nobody was misbehaving. Everything that happens is for my good and nobody's misbehaving. And everything that has happened was all for my good and nobody was misbehaving. So these are the things that I invite you to consider, excuse me, that we're loving what is. That's the challenge of where we are almost always, but it seems even more challenging now than ever, of loving what is and loving what was. And COVID's giving us a little bit of time now that we might not have had in our normal routines from the past, to do a little self-reflection, another Corona bonus, and move through the rectification process where we begin to see it differently in order to be it differently. So if you can just sit in your chair and allow yourself to relax for just a second, close your eyes if you will, and come to think about or bring to the vision in your eye the image, whatever works for you. A person, a thing, a situation from your past that represents for you some of that stuff that you're stuck with that Martha read us about. Or maybe in the metaphor of the resurrection, somebody that's been part of your crucifixion. So you have that awareness of this person, place, or thing. And now slowly breathe in while you hold that image, and breathe back out again. And on the exhalation, feel yourself centering more upright in your chair. Feel your chest expanding with that breath in, breath out. And now, how would you choose for it to be? How would you choose them to be? How would you choose the situation to be? How would you choose a different outcome? And feel into that. I've got something in my eye here. Look at that thing or idea or feeling or habit. And picture yourself liberated from it. If it's a thing, see the space cleared out and picture in its space a replacement, or maybe just the open space that eliminated it. If it's a feeling, just make a choice not to have that feeling and see what that feels like, to lift that burden of emotional weight. If it's a bad habit, see yourself without it. And where you are, with whom you are associating, how you are without that habit, in the now, right here, right now. And hold those pictures, develop those pictures, put that film into the camera and see that in your mind's eye. I can't see smiles on your faces because of the mask, but I hope that some of you are feeling much better and having a smile under the mask. So come back in the room when you're ready, if you're ready. Somebody might not be ready to come back because that was pretty good where you were, maybe. Sorry, I'm losing my voice here. And just allow yourself to be ready for this resurrection, this reckoning, and this rectification that I've talked with you about today. Take home with you today what it is that works for you and leave the rest of it here. And I'd like to close with just saying, if nothing seems true, then everything is possible. And when everything changes, change everything. Be a possibilist. Live in the solution, not in the problem. And choose the flight path for your resurrection and rise up. And I want to invite you to feel that rise up. Please stand if you can, if you will. And recognize that you and everyone that's in this room is still standing. You know, we're here. We're survivors, not victims. Victims are just people who are survivors that don't realize they've got there yet. So we are all surviving. Now applaud yourself and everybody else that has been through this. And remember that Elton John song? I'm still standing, better than ever was before. That's what you can go out of here with today. You can sit if you want, or you can stay standing, and we're going to take a stand for love, knowing that through this love, through this namasteing up, is where the whole process begins, and it starts in the mirror. Namaste up to you in the mirror. So if you want to stand, you can. If you want to sit down, please do. We're going to do a spiritual mind treatment right now and close up. So right here, right now, in this moment, we breathe in to that awareness, preparing to make new choices, knowing that we are one. We are one in spirit. We are one in spirit here together. We are one with each other, and we are one with the spirit that is inside of each of us, that we know that there is a power and a presence. There is a power within us that is not a power of us, but a power that works through us. And we allow ourselves to feel the essence of that presence, of that power that is spirit, that is the one life, the one mind, that is our life right here and right now. And from that place of unification and oneness, we move into rising up. We rise up from disease or illness or the fear of ease or illness. We rise up to the perfect health, perfect wholeness. We rise up from any financial insecurity, any fear of financial insecurity for ourselves or for others. And we rise up to abundance, perfect, whole abundance and prosperity. We rise up from fear. We rise up from anxiety. And we are on the path of faith and love. And we are rising up from any conflict, any division, any war, to perfect harmony and peace, the inner peace that begins within, the peace that passeth all understanding. And in great gratitude for our rising up, for our awareness, our breathing, and our choices, and the great philosophy of the tools that we have, thanks to Ernest Holmes and the science of mind, we know that that power that is within us, that is not of us, but that works through us, is growing as we let go of what's in its way. We ignite the fire. We're grateful for the resurrection and the reckoning and the rectification that is lying ahead as we leave here today, knowing that these words have been spoken into the law and are so now, and so it is. Amen. Namaste.
And now we have another musical gift from Mark and Taylor. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy, for that really invigorating message this morning. And it is kind of serendipitous that we chose this next song. It's from the musical Funny Girl. It's called Don't Rain on My Parade. And it's about living boldly and without fear and going forward after the fire. So here we go. Don't tell me not to live, just sit and putter. Life's candy and the sun's a bowl of butter. Don't bring around a cloud to rain on my parade. Don't tell me not to fly, I've simply got to. If someone takes a spill, it's me and not you. Who told you you're allowed to rain on my parade? I'll march my band out, I'll beat my drum, and if I'm found out, your turn at that, sir. At least I didn't fake it, hot sir. I guess I didn't make it, but whether on the rose of sheer perfection, a freckle on the nose of life's complexion, the cinder or a shiny apple of its eye, I gotta fly once, I gotta try once, only can die once, right? So love is juicy, and you'll see I gotta have my bite, sir. Get ready for me, love, 'cause I'm a comer. I simply gotta march 'cause I'm a drummer. Don't bring around a cloud to rain on my parade. I'm gonna live and live now, get what I want, I know how. One roll for the whole shebang, one throw, that bell will go clang. Eye on the target and wham, one shot, one gunshot and bam. Hey, Mr. Armstein, here I
Wow, thank you. That was beautiful and perfect, as it always is, as Peggy recognizes. All right, so we come to this part of our service where, as we receive our virtual and in-person gifts, we give great thanks for the offerings already given and for those we will be receiving, because we know that giving and receiving are both parts of the flow. We bless these gifts and know that they are multiplied throughout our community. And so there are a number of folks who have contributed to the production of this service. We are grateful for their service, and we thank you for joining us today. And lastly, please stay around in the Zoom meeting after the service to visit. And now I invite you to read with me the benediction, followed by our congregational song. Spirit in the midst of us is mighty. Joy, peace, and eternal life are our true nature and flow through us into the world. And so it is.